Business Connections Live, the UK's leading online business channel. This is Business Connections Live with Steve Hyland.
Hello there, welcome along. This is Business Connections Live, the program for entrepreneurs, SMEs and business owners. Now we've got a really cracking show once again for you lined up live today here on Business Connections Live. And over the past couple of weeks, you may remember, we've been talking about things like customer engagement and employee engagement, and we've been getting different views about that. Also been looking at leadership as well within business. One of the most important things that any business can have are strong, positive, clear leaders. Many organisations, of course, fall down when that actually happens. But more importantly, what happens when you've got strong leadership and a great workforce, but the two aren't talking to each other? How do you engage your workforce? How do you communicate with them? How do you motivate them? How do you turn them on? How do you make them feel that everything is great about the business that they're working in? If you think about it, we all go to work and we spend probably more time in the office or at work in employment than we do with our families. So that time has got to be a time, surely. We've got to make certain that it's working effectively, not only for us, but also for the business and the organisation that we're in. Now, on today's show, we're going to be discussing employee engagement and the impact on employee motivation. And joining me in the studio is Deborah Hulme, founder of Minerva Engagement. Deborah, it's lovely to have you back on the programme once again. Now, the last time we were on, we were talking about neuroscience, and it's a bit like Buster's neuroscience, isn't it? You don't hear from anybody about neuroscience, and all of a sudden, everybody that you talk to is doing neuroscience. But a lot of the neuroscience, the techniques, the understanding, the things that you use, the principles that are used in neuroscience are now being very much applied to employee and customer engagement, aren't they?
Yes, they are. I think the issue with neuroscience until more recently is that it's been great to talk about it. The science has been massively interesting and people can understand it from an individual point of view. But it's been very difficult to understand or work through how to bring that to life within an organisational setting and how to apply it practically within business. But I think we're starting to really understand that a lot more now, and it is helping and it is supporting what we're doing around the engagement agenda. All
right, now we are going to be talking, as we said today, about what businesses can do when it comes to employee engagement. You go into a number of businesses. You've worked for large blue chip organisations around the UK. You've seen the problems that many companies actually experience. When you walk in, Deborah, what's the classic? Is there a classic mistake that senior management within an organisation may make?
I think mistake's probably too harsh a word, but there are classical things that are going on that you can extrapolate across many different organisations. So I think we hugely underestimate the impact of the emotion and the emotional agenda that we all have as individuals. So within organisations, we tend to communicate and we tend to engage very much on a rational level. So we are very much driven by strategy and process and facts and figures, but we forget that as human beings, we're very emotional, and when we're receiving information, we receive it first and foremost, even though we may receive it unconsciously, we receive it first and foremost on an emotional level. So you can't underestimate that emotional agenda. And most of the time within organisations, because of the way that we've been trained, we tend to jump straight into the rational explanation. I think the other area that we underestimate greatly is our attention spans. So one of the big surprises that's come out of neuroscience is that we have very limited attention spans. So if you overload us with lots and lots of different information, if you're not really focused on what it is you want us to engage with, what it is you want us to hear, we can't digest it, we can't take it in, we can't do anything with it because it tires us very, very quickly. So we don't have the attention span to concentrate on lots and lots of different things. And unfortunately, in a lot of organisations, because we're going through huge change, and that change is speeding up and speeding up, we don't take the time to really distill down what is it we exactly want to land, what is it that it is really important that people understand, what is it that we want them to do as a result of what we are communicating. So the attention span is also complicates matters.
So is it a case then that we start with all good intentions? We kick off and we do go through the process of communicating with our workforce. We do say all the right things. Is it a case that we don't say it enough times to them, or is it a case that we don't put it in a format or a form that that will resonate with them as a workforce? Is that the bit that we get wrong? Because I think if you talk to many organisations, they do think that they are communicating with their workforce. They're sending out the newsletters, they're sending out the emails, they're doing all the communication. Is it just going into the big drawer marked B for bin?
I think there's a number of things, actually. If you look at what gets in the way of change particularly, or if you look at what gets in the way of me being able to engage with something that you're saying, there's a number of different factors. One is attitude and beliefs. So we have very deep-seated attitudes and beliefs, and they take a lot of time to shift and to move. So therefore, if you're asking me to change something that's fundamentally going to alter the way I think about something or I do something, you have to meet me on in my belief system. You have to move my belief system. That takes a lot of time. It's not something you can do in 2 weeks. It's not something that you can do on an email. And I think a lot of organisations underestimate consistency over time and the amount of time that's required. Also, to change somebody's belief system, the only way that you can really do it is to increase their knowledge around the certain subject. So yes, you can tell somebody about something, but you have to engage in more conversation and debate to impact those attitudes and beliefs, and it does take a long period of time. I think the other area is that we don't understand enough about behaviour. It's coming in now, but up until this point we haven't understood enough about behaviour. So one of the principles on which we operate is the principle of threat and reward. If we are receiving information and we're feeling threatened, we will close down and we won't digest again what's being said to us. And there are a number of different levels where that operates. So if you are threatening somebody's status, it's the scarf model actually, if you're threatening somebody's status, people see that almost as badly as they would view a threat on life. It's a really, really deep-seated threat. And status can be impacted by moving somebody's role, moving somebody's location, not respecting somebody when you're going into a meeting. There's many different ways that you can affect somebody's status, and we don't put enough store by that when we're thinking about engagement and when we're thinking about communication particularly.
There are a lot of managers that are out there at the moment, and they do feel they will nearly manage by fear, or they manage by their extreme character, or by nearly order and command and
control.
Yes,
yeah.
And there are a lot of businesses that seem to be still run like that. Is this like legacy from the early days of the Industrial Revolution? That what we've got is that was the way it was. There was the leader did, and you didn't question. And we've just become a bit softer when it comes to the way that businesses are organised and run these days.
I think a lot of leaders, to be fair, these days are trying very, very hard to engage their teams and engage their wider organisations on more of a knowledge-based approach and more of a sharing of ideas. So the command and control is still there. I think a lot are trying to move away from it. It doesn't work. I mean, it used to work maybe when we were less developed and less evolved, and when we didn't have the thinking capability and we didn't have the knowledge working environment that we've got now, but it doesn't work anymore. The only way that you can really motivate individuals is more through intrinsic methods and intrinsic methodology. So if you look at the way that we're motivated, we tend to, through the command and control type approach, lean more towards extrinsic motivators. So that comes through pay and process. So what you're doing is you are rewarding good behaviour and you're punishing not so good behaviour. That's a very slow archaic way of making change. And actually, if you look at Dan Pink, he's done a lot of work around the theory of motivation. And this is also being supported by what's coming over the fence from the science community now. As individuals, we are motivated much more effectively intrinsically, and that's things like a sense of purpose. So if we have a sense of purpose that aligns with our internal sense of purpose and what we believe we're here to do, if we feel that what we're doing is adding value and we can make the connection, that hugely motivates us to go the extra mile. The other intrinsic motivator is autonomy. We like to have a sense of control, and again, this is being hugely underpinned by the research now that's coming through from neuroscience. We do not like having no control. We don't like being told exactly what to do with no voice or no say. It also fits into McLeod's employee engagement factors, actually, because he brought up employee voice. It's the same thing. So if we can go to work knowing that we're working for an organisation that is aligned to where we are and what we believe, if we can go to work knowing that our voice counts and that we have an opinion and that we can contribute to the agenda, again, we're hugely motivated. And the final thing in that theory is around mastery. So, and that again fits into the fact that we're more knowledge workers now. We're more interested in what's around us and the contributions we can make. So the more an organisation can support my learning, the more it can support my growth, the more motivated that I am. So those three things are really important for motivation, and they are intrinsic, they're not extrinsic. You can give me an increase in my pay packet and I'll feel the bounce of it, but probably only for week, 2 weeks, and then something else will come in and I need something else. The intrinsic motivators last for a lot longer. They go on for longer periods of time. The difficulty is that if an organisation is very focused on extrinsic motivators and they're pushing people along that reward and punishment continuum, what it does in effect is it actually reduces the intrinsic motivation that you have internally. So you're reducing the intrinsic motivators that actually would take you further. So it's really not a good place to be.
Right, we'll stay there, because the other question I'm going to come back with, I'm going to wonder, I still wonder if it's a bit of a legacy thing when it comes to age groups, where they come from. My father, for instance, is very driven by the boss and the worker. So he sees himself very much as a worker, and I sometimes see him standing back when it comes to individuals who take on the position of authority. He's quite submissive to that, which is quite interesting, because for his generation, I think a lot of people like that. More from Deborah in just a few moments' time. You're watching Business Connections Live. It's great to have your company as always. Now, we understand a little bit of problems, I think, with Deborah's microphone, but we will sort that out just in a few moments' time. Let's go back to last week's programme, because we were looking at the whole world of mentoring. What does that mean to you? If you've been looking for a mentor in your business life, where do you go? What are you looking for? What are the key things that are going to be important for the right kind of mentor? I think there are mentors and there are mentors. There are mentoring organisations, and there are some that maybe will just give you the spoken word. They will talk you through their, yes, they'll open their black book. They will help you. And there are other organisations, other mentors, who will actually provide you with a number of services that you can then actually go to and you can use to grow and develop your particular business. Jonathan Fowle was on the programme last week. He's from the Rockstar Group. They're based in Central London. In fact, they've got hubs all over the world now. The hub I've been to is in Central London. And if you are approaching Rockstar for them to mentor you, they do offer a whole raft of fantastic services, everything from legal all the way through. Now, the programme wasn't an ad for Rockstar. It was all about mentoring last week and what you should be looking for. Fascinating show. The guy really is very, very knowledgeable. So just to give you a bit of an update on what happened in last week's programmes, here's what Jonathan Fowle was saying, the Managing Director of Rockstar Group of Companies, on last week's edition of Business Connections Live. Today's show, we're going to be discussing the benefits of mentoring, whatever stage your business is at, why you should need a mentor, what are the best ways to approach to get mentoring, but also what other services are out there when it comes to mentoring. Joining me in the studio today is an old friend of the program, Jonathan Fowle. He's the Managing Director, Rockstar Group.
I've always believed if you want to achieve success, the fastest way to do it, and that's success in business, either your own business or working for someone else, the fastest way to achieve business goals is to find someone who has already achieved what it is that you want to do. In 2007, when I set up Rockstar, there was a huge gap in the market to create access to quality entrepreneurs that SMEs and starting businesses would absolutely pay to get access to. Fast forward 10 years, there are dozens, if not hundreds, of companies, incubators, accelerators offering mentoring, and a lot of that mentoring is free. However, as a result of that, the quality of the mentors that are there are nowhere near as high as other organisations. A good mentor is someone who genuinely cares about the success of the business piece, the person that they're working for. You've got to, and their passion for it comes from the passion of the entrepreneur. And a great mentor-mentee relationship is one where the mentor themselves are very fond, not just of the business, but the individual themselves. So it very much is a two-way relationship. How do you guarantee, or how can you measure that mentoring is good? That's a very, very good start to a successful mentor-mentee relationship, is when you're leveraging off the experience of someone who can very quickly say, as I said before about that helicopter view, this is why it's not working and this is what you need to do to fix it. Half the time we now say to people, you actually don't need a mentor. You know, you don't need a mentor, right? This is what's wrong. Like, have a few hours initially, and they're going to outline and show you what the problems and what the solution should be. But what you need to be investing in are those solutions. And at the same time, we also then ask, which is the most important thing to build a successful client, is to ask that individual, what are you doing this for? What's your goal? You know, what's the number that you want to be selling this company for in the future, or how old do you want to be when you retire? Remember before how I said I've always believed the harder you work, the luckier you get, and I've always believed it's not what you know, it's who you know. And the guy who blasted me for that is actually inside my organisation now, because that's how I've always lived. That's how I've always done business, because I'm a sales guy, you know. I just need to know who's got all those connections, to build the relationship with that. I'll get it in and we'll go from there. But is it a case of if you don't know what you don't know? Absolutely, because I got fired back and said, mate, it's everything about what you know, because that gives you that advantage. Knowledge is power is another way that you can put it. Hi everyone, my name is Jonathan Fowle, the founder and managing director of the Rockstar Group of companies. In essence, we are a resource bank for entrepreneurs and investors. Hundreds and thousands of companies are always looking to be that success within their sector. Entrepreneurs, you're going out there risking it all, your money, sometimes family money, in order to turn that dream that you've got into reality. The first piece of advice that I want to give you, and as a real take back I want you to get, is especially, and you learn this as you go more down the line of this journey, because it's not always what you expect it to be, is firstly know why the hell you're doing it. What's the goal? What's the vision? What's the physical amount you want this company to be when you sell it? Or what's that picture in your head that you're, you know, relaxing on a beach or on your super yacht at one time? You need to know why you're doing it, because what we then do, and what we're really, really good at helping businesses do, is lifting the bonnet up on what you're trying to achieve based on that goal, and very quickly being able to assess to you why it's not working or what you can be doing to make it work a lot faster. And sometimes even the business that you're even trying to build is not the one that you should be, because it's getting you nowhere near your goal. So for entrepreneurs, we have access to some of the world's best mentors, business people who have been there and done it. You can get access to them. We rent our some of the best salespeople, you know, in the UK to our clients' businesses, so we can actually pick up the phone for you very cost effectively and sell you and get you in front of your customers, or we can do that. If you need to build technology, an app, for example, we own an app development company. It is a very cost-effective platform that you can do. We own a law firm, we own a crowd fund, we own a hedge fund, we own a media agency, we own everything in-house. And the reason why we do it is because we're not in the business, believe it or not, of trying to make money from these resources. If we can give these services to you at cost, and you can reduce your cost, and your profits then and sales start going up, you're going to be very, very happy. And then you're going to become an investor with us. And that's really what we love doing, is giving high net worths, small entrepreneurs access to invest in very fast growing tech businesses where we manage, we control, have all the resources in-house, and actually start delivering on the returns that you want. So for more information, rockstargroup.co.uk, and I look forward to seeing you very soon. Cheers.
Jonathan Val there from the Rockstar Group. You can go to one of their hubs. You'll find them in Central London. In fact, you'll find them all over the world, in fact. The one, as I said, I've been to is in Central London. Fantastic place. What is wonderful, you walk in there and you see, you just feel the entrepreneurship. Sort of, it seems to be embedded into the walls. You walk through the building and you just feel that it's new, it's exciting. There are ideas being thought up even as you're walking around. And then these entrepreneurs are surrounded by this infrastructure that is allowing them to move those ideas forward and turn them into profitable businesses. It is just an amazing organisation. If you go online, you can find Rockstar. Just put in Rockstar Mentoring into your web browser or Rockstar Hubs, and you'll get more information. Jonathan Val there, and a great show. If you did miss it, I suggest you look back at the programme as well that went out last week on Business Connections Live. Now, if you thought Deborah was really good up until now, she's going to be even better in just a few moments' time. But the thing that's interesting about all of this is, just imagine having a programme like Jonathan's or like Deborah's programme that we're talking today, where you are now communicating maybe with your workforce or you're communicating with your customer base. A lot of people think that by sending out an email or a newsletter is going to be a constructive and effective way to communicate with people. In radio, for instance, it takes 4 times to hear an advertisement before people even start to realise that they're hearing it. And we will send out a piece of paper, we'll send out an email to somebody, and we expect our target audience to react to that. But imagine instead of sending out an email, you were sending out something that was like this, a programme where you hear the voice, you see the body language, you see everything that's going on. You actually feel that you're now part of. It's something that we are conditioned to do. We watch television. Imagine doing that with your workforce, allowing them to sit back for a moment and watch you on television, telling them the key information that they need to know. If you'd like to have a programme like this one for your organisation, why don't you contact us here at Business Connections Live? It's dead easy. You can drop us an email to studio@businessconnectionslive.com. But better, why don't you give us a call? Ring us up, have a word. The telephone number is 01784 256 777. That's our telephone number. Have a word with us, Ian. Talk to either myself, Steve Highland, or Linda Bazant. I know when you go onto our YouTube pages and things like that, it's all me, me, me. It isn't me, me, me. It is actually, there's a team here that put this programme together for you. And that's important. You talk to any of the members of the team that are here to find out how this idea could work better for your organisation. All right. The other thing you can do as well, you can follow our stream of consciousness or DM us on Twitter at BCLtv. Don't forget our Facebook Live offering. We do that every week as well. One day we'll actually monetize that properly. I mean, we're learning too, but we think Facebook Live is fantastic. And we're everywhere else, Roku, Stitcher, Blueberry and iTunes. There's a whole host of places that you can get the programme, and thousands of people are now downloading the programme each and every week. And for that, we say thank you very much indeed. You're watching Business Connections Live. My guest in the studio today is Deborah Hulme. She's the founder of Minerva Engagement. We're talking about, employee engagement. We were talking before our little break. I was mentioning about my dad, and that seems to be a generational thing. There was a generation of people who went to work and the boss was the boss.
Yes.
And they would do as they were told. They didn't really interact with the boss. It was just a different way of communicating. And to a certain extent, I don't think he really even cared what the business was doing. He would be told what to do, he'd go out, he'd do what the job was, and then he'd get paid for it.
Yes.
But it is very, very different now, isn't it? Or do you still see that?
No. It's hugely different now. Even organisations that are going through a relatively stable period are still experiencing change. Thanks to many different factors, technology for one, for example, we are having to adapt daily to internal and external pressures. So organisations are having to change continuously. Also, because of the complexity of the environments that we are operating within, it's no longer possible for one person or a group of 10 people at the top of an organisation to know exactly what to do, how to do it, when to do it, and what strategy to wrap around it.
You've been at the top of the table, though, haven't you? I know from your background that you've worked in organisations where you've been there. You've been at the top table. Your job has been to communicate downwards to the workforce, or upwards, depending how you want to look at it, but is to communicate to the workforce. You must see that there are restrictions in large organisations these days, that there's only a certain amount that you can do. We've all got this thing in our head that we want to do more, but there's a restriction that we can't do more.
But I'm not sure that's right. So
you can tell me I'm wrong.
No,
I don't mind that.
Actually, I think you are.
Talk to the hand. The face ain't listening yet.
I think you are. No. If you operate, or if you think and work to the old way of being, then yes, you're right. It's practically impossible to engage everybody and communicate with everybody and connect with everybody. But if you look at organisations as being made up of many, many different individuals who are linked into many, many different teams, then actually you can think about it and you can work in a different way. So if you forget the fact that a leader and a board are the ones responsible for communication, or the internal communication team, or the HR team, if you work on the basis that everybody has something to communicate, and all leaders and managers actually have a responsibility for making those connections and for ensuring that their teams are comfortable, engaged, understand what the business is trying to do, engaging in conversation, feeding information up and down and horizontally, then actually it is absolutely possible to mine the organisation, if you like, for some of the best ideas and the best thinking around how the organisation should go forward.
In the organisations that you've worked with, do you think that mechanism is there? We see a lot of the downward traffic, but do we see that? I always liken it to a conduit of communication up and down, but a lot of it goes in one direction. It's top down and not bottom up. We had somebody on that was talking about employee comms a long while back, and they put a project into their business called cloud busting, because you had the workforce down here and you had the management up here, and between them was this sandwich was this murky cloud, and what they were trying to do was to burst the information through the cloud up and down, so that, hence the reason they call it cloud busting, so that people were hearing what the board was saying, but the board were also hearing what the employees were saying.
It's broader than communication, I think. It's more about relationships and connections now. And people who are working in the type of organisations that we have today need to be expert at building relationships, managing networks, and creating connections. And you can't do that if you're looking at it purely from a one-way communication channel. And I know a lot of organisations are moving from that now, and a lot have done it and managed it quite successfully. I think where some of the difficulty has been is that leaders and managers particularly have not had the confidence or the tools, to be fair, to be able to do that really well. So if you look at how we're trained, and if you look at the schooling that we have, it's very much, as I say, around the rational thinking. It's very much around logic. We're not taught how to really build great relationships. We're not taught how to extract, well, it's not even extract, actually, that's absolutely the wrong word. We're not taught how to create conversations that allow creativity to flourish, for example. We're not given those tools, and we're not supported through that process. And I think what we're finding now with some of the theories and the science that's coming through, we can actually do that. And I know when I talk to people in business, they find the neuroscience fascinating for a number of different reasons, actually. One, the novelty value. They love learning something new. Everybody likes to learn something new, and the newer it is, the more we remember it, which is great. Two, the fact that we can actually physically understand and picture what is happening. So before, when you talk about behaviour, it's all very grey, it's all very sort of fluffy, and it's all very out there. When you talk about the brain and you say, actually, when people are in a fear state, what happens is the blood flows from this part of the brain to this part of the brain, and when it does that, this piece here goes like that, which basically means nobody can think about anything. People can picture that, and it's real, and they can hold on to it, and once you've worked out the basic principles of it, you can do something with it. So even the fact that you are learning more about how the brain works actually changes how you behave on an individual basis. So you become more mindful of your own behaviours, and you become more mindful on the impact that you're having on others. And when that happens, you can then create environments that are more conducive to conversation. You can create environments that are more conducive to creativity.
But that is an educational thing, isn't it? That and a journey of self-awareness for a senior executive, because as if I know anything, but if you look at a senior executive in an organisation, his particular skills may well be in an accountancy role where it's numerically based, it's formula based, and the skills that we're talking about, and you liken them there to soft skills, aren't they? It's the understanding emotion and being empathetic with if that's a real word, but having empathy with the workforce. And sometimes the two don't sit comfortably together. And it's very difficult for somebody who is process-driven, numerically based, 1 and 1 is 2, to have that empathy with the workforce.
Right, so
can it be taught?
Oh, it can absolutely be taught. It's not, whilst we tend to describe them as soft skills, they're really hard skills. I actually think the empathy, the behaviour, the ability to connect and build relationships and create the right environments is by far harder than it is to learn a logical process or learn your accounting or your lawyer or your engineering or whatever it happens to be.
But some people can just do it, can't they?
Can just do the engineering.
They can have that empathy. There are some people that seem to have natural empathy.
Very few actually can do it really naturally. 1 or 2 can, yes, out of maybe 1,000, but very, very few are natural. The ones that are good at it are the ones that have spent time on it, have thought about it, and self-reflect. And actually, very few of us do that. When we do it, and when we build those skills and capabilities, it becomes really obvious to everybody around. And then everybody says, oh, they're really naturally good at that. No, they're not naturally good at it.
Overnight success, it took 14 years. Yeah.
Practicing. So to give you a really clear example, which actually is helpful not just in organisational settings, but in home settings as well, you just have to look at the law of written and unwritten rules. So within organisations, we will have a whole load of written rules that we will expect people to follow. Then we get massively surprised if they don't follow them. But what we don't take the time to think about is, okay, so what are the unwritten rules? And how are they conflicting with the written rules? So if you have a written rule that, let's say, the customer is always first. I know that, I'm just using that as an example. It can be as wide or as broad as you want. But let's say the customer is always first.
Customer is king.
Customer is king. That is the written rule, whatever that means. It's the written rule. When it comes to the unwritten rule, though, when the customer calls up and the customer is emotional or the customer is upset, we have a written rule that says you have to we have the written rule that the customer is king, but the unwritten rule is, well, actually, when they're on, I need to get off the phone because I've only got this period of time when I can handle the call, and if I don't get off the phone, my manager's going to have a word with me. That's the unwritten rule. So we always follow the unwritten rule. As human beings, we will listen to the written rule, but the rule that we always follow is the unwritten rule.
So is this, some people would call then, and it's something we need to be aware of, is this the lip service of employee engagement? So we know what we should be doing, but actually we do something different.
We don't spend enough time. Some people do, but the majority of us do not spend enough time either in organisations or in our personal lives looking at what the written and the unwritten rules are. And when we don't understand that difference, we're always dragged by the unwritten rule. So if you have an organisation who says, we respect time. We always turn up to meetings on time. That is the written rule. But everybody turns up to the meetings 5 minutes late. The rule is we don't respect time. We turn up to the meetings late. So once you can start to see the written rules as opposed to the unwritten rules, you can then start to change your behaviour. And the reason this comes back to individuals and leaders and managers within business is because the ones that are good at it are the ones that notice these things. So they'll notice the written and the unwritten rule, and they'll adapt their behaviour, and they'll manage their emotion. If the written rule is, I really respect your opinion, but the unwritten rule, every time you come into my office and I'm under pressure, I shout at you, I don't respect your opinion. You're not going to come into my office very often to talk to me because I know when I go in, you're going to shout at me even though it's written in black and white. You respect my opinion. I have to learn how to manage myself to be of best service to those around me.
All right, listen, we're going to come back. We're going to get right onto the whole area of motivation. One of the most interesting things that comes out of all of this, and we're going to talk about it as well, I hope, is also the repetition as well. It's the number of times that you repeat or you inform or you engage with your employees to get a point over to them. We were talking before we came on air today that it's very easy. In radio, there's an old saying, it takes 2 years to build an audience. 2 years. So the new guy comes on the breakfast show, pop-a-doodle-doo, good morning, it's 6:45. He comes on, it takes 2 years for the audience to get under the skin of the whole thing, to become part of it. But the sad thing about it is it only takes 10 minutes or tomorrow for them to forget you. And I think the same applies to a certain extent in employee comms. You've got to continuously be talking. You've just got to keep getting your message out there in all the different ways, all the different facets. You just got to keep talking, because if you stop talking, it takes no time at all. And that's it. You've lost them, and they become disenfranchised with you. They're not engaged any longer with you, or maybe don't even understand perhaps what you're asking them to do anymore. I'm hoping that Deborah will agree with me in a few moments' time. Maybe not.
Maybe not.
And that's what I love about this show. And that's what it's all about. You're watching Business Connections Live. Great to have you with us on the programme today. Hope you are enjoying the show. If you are in that area at the moment, employee comms is a funny old area actually, and it's so important for businesses to develop and to grow. And Deborah's also been alluding to neuroscience. And as I said at the beginning of the program, like all neuroscience people, you don't talk about it for months and months and months, and all of a sudden, like buses, two of them come along together. And it was interesting because I knew that Deborah was coming on the program on the previous show to talk about neuroscience, and I bumped into a young lady called Dr. Linda Shaw, who is a neuroscientist, business psychologist and professional speaker, consultant and author. Fascinating lady as well, just a lovely, lovely lady. Got to know her very well too. She speaks up and down the country on the use of the understanding of neuroscience within business. And just to give you a bit of it kind of fits in quite nicely with what we're talking about today. And it gives another perspective as well on neuroscience. So just to give you the key takeaways to Dr. Linda Shaw, here's what she said when she was on Business Connections Live.
Hello everyone, I'm Linda Shaw. I'm a neuroscientist and a psychologist, and I love working with the ambitious. I love working with business owners, business founders, people who really want to do something and understand people to grow their business and maybe get their pot of gold in 5 years' time. So, my 3 takeaway tips for you to make your business grow by building relationships well with your teams and your clients and your customers is, first of all, remember that emotion is key to all decision making. Emotion is key to everything you do. So if you have maybe a message at work or something that's some kind of core value that you have as business, make sure that emotion that you have in that core value, everybody in your firm knows about it. Everybody talks about it, so you're all aligned with the one thing that you really want your customers, your clients to feel. So that's a big one. My second tip is try to build trust as much as you can, but remember that trust has a dark side, so you have to be as trustworthy as you possibly can be. So I think that's really important as well. And thirdly, if you are going to make big decisions, which of course you will have to make big decisions, get others talking, talk to others, get feedback from them, gather your data, and remember your perception is never reality. There is no such thing. Your perception is flawed, and their perceptions you will need to take on board for those really awesome decisions. So good luck.
Good luck. Great lady, Dr. Linda Shaw. If you want to watch the entire programme, just check out Business Connections Live 150. That was the 3rd of October 2016. We must get her back on the programme, actually, because they're really interesting and really saying a lot of what you're saying as well, which I think is what this is all about. It's that support of individual notions, that support of individual pieces of information that actually show give the comments and everything the real gravitas that each and every comment deserves. Anyway, as I said, it's BCL 150, 3rd of October 2016, and what she also writes on the program: when we understand how our brain works, we can influence our behaviour and the behaviour of others. Communication is the foundation of everything, and getting it wrong causes a tidal wave of problems. Get it right, and everything potentially can run smoothly. You're watching Business Connections Live. My guest on today's show is Deborah Hulme. She's the founder of Minerva Engagement. Today we're talking all about customer engagement and also employee motivation, customer engagement, employee engagement, and also employee motivation. Are the two the same, engagement and motivation, before you strangled me on my last comment? So are they the same, motivation and engagement?
No, they're different, but they work very much yin-yang. They work together.
You were disagreeing with me because I was going on about you've got to keep talking, you've got to keep telling people, you've got to keep saying the same thing repeatedly to people.
Only in part.
So a soft disagreement then?
A soft disagreement. Yes, we do need to keep talking, but I think we need to be very aware of the fact that individuals generally can't focus on a lot of different things. So keep talking by all means, but make sure that what you're talking about is consistent over time, and make sure that it's not bringing in lots and lots of different elements, because that's what we tend to do in organisations. We'll talk about something for a week, then we'll talk about something else next week, and then next month there's another load of initiatives that have just landed, and so on and so on and so on. So we're constantly talking, but actually what we're doing is we're hugely overloading the listener, and we're tiring individuals around the business, and that has a twofold that's a twofold issue, to be honest.
So when are you going to disagree with me then?
No, I'm kind of disagreeing with you that it's not just about repeating the communication. I think also
it's about being laser focused.
It's about being focused on the communication. It's also about creating those connections. I think that's really important. It's not just about communicating. It's about listening. It's a big part of listening and allowing people to engage in the conversation. And the third bit, which I think is really important, regardless of which function you sit in, is this whole piece around connection and social connection. We now know that the social side of ourselves is really important. It takes up huge areas in our brain. So if we're not creating an environment where we can socially connect, where we can engage in conversation, if it's just one-way communication all the time, it's not going to work. And also I think it's not just about throwing the communication out there, it's really understanding that threat and reward dimension and really being able to plot, are we communicating in a way that's going to threaten status? Are we communicating in a way that's going to threaten a sense of certainty? Are we communicating in a way that's threatening autonomy, relatedness, or fairness? And if we are, then actually we need to do a lot more work to upweight the areas that we can do something about to reduce the threat, and to mitigate against the areas where we really can't do anything and we are going to threaten people. I think the other point to bring in is that the communication can't just flow from a senior team or from an HR team or from an internal comms team. And actually the in-out group dimension is really very strong. If you're wanting to communicate something that is actually going to impact people quite considerably, you need to do it through what we perceive as our in-group. You need to do it through the managers and the leaders that are based locally. You need to spend more time with them than actually you do crafting an email that's going to go from the centre out to everybody. Because the mere fact that it's come from the centre into my area well, you're an out-group, you're nothing to me, why should I take any notice of this? The fact that you're my manager and you've sat down and talked to me about it and explained it, and I can question it, and I've got some input to give, very important, I'm going to listen. It's
interesting in the linguistics that you use there, that we're pulling back, we're being aware of, I hesitate at saying it, but threatening behaviour, or maybe getting the message wrong. Is the things that we need not to do are obviously all the negative things, but are there positive things that we can actually plug into this, where it nearly makes the motivational aspect of it come alive? Are there positive actions as a manager I can take that, as opposed to watching about threatening somebody's position, status or whatever, is there a positive action that I can take that will make somebody feel more motivated?
Well, that's where these models and these approaches become really helpful, because if you are thinking of talking to your team member, or if you're thinking of sending a communication out, and you know that actually the message that is going to land is going to feel quite threatening for the person that's on the receiving end of it, before you send that communication or before you have that conversation, you need to sit down and think about, what can I say or do that's going to position this in such a way that I'm going to move this person more towards the reward state? I'm going to move them away from this threat state.
How important do you think it is for the manager to understand what the workforce employee's actual job is? Because sometimes that's the disconnect, isn't it? You don't really know what I do. How can you tell me? How can there's that kind of disconnect, or is that very similar to the fact that there's no empathy between the two people?
If it's the manager of a team, I would expect the manager of the team to know what the team is doing, and to actually have a view and an involvement in terms of how to land that particular message. If it's somebody much further afield, they may not know what that team is doing. One of the big things that usually happens in the centre, though, is there is an awful lot of stakeholder management and audience analysis before you start throwing communications out from the centre. However, that will never ever supplant or be better than the manager's local knowledge of what's happening in that team. So they should really understand that. That's one of the core roles of the team leaders and managers.
Do you think we do enough training? I mean, you took a step back and you've learned neuroscience, the understanding of what's going on in people's minds, what the motivations are behind the decisions that they make. Do you think that we have maybe a generation of managers who don't have just the appropriate training to get the best out of their workforces?
I think that the research that's now coming through is really helpful for that group of people. They've been trained. So to say that managers and leaders haven't been trained would not be correct. They have been trained, but what we have now is more knowledge, more intelligence, more information to really help them manage the behavioural, emotional aspects of their roles much more, and also themselves actually, much more effectively than we've been able to in the past. And I know from the conversations that I've had with different groups, and they don't need to just be managers and leaders, by the way, this is applicable to every individual on the planet effectively, because it's all about how we handle ourselves and how we relate to other people. Once they have been given and discussed and debated even the basics of it, then actually their behaviour changes and the way they relate with other people changes. So for me personally, I think it's hugely powerful and hugely helpful to individuals to understand. So for example, we have a lot of I've been talking about the threat and the reward state. Why is that important? Quite simply, when we are in a threat state, we are basically highly stressed and we're activating our flight-fight mode. Mm-hmm. The thinking part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex bit that sits right at the very front, is responsible for all of our strategizing, goal setting, creativity. It stops our emotional outbursts because it acts as a natural brake. It's basically the big executive center. When we're under stress and we're in that fear state, the thinking aspect of our brain reduces to really considerably. It reduces to practically nothing, which basically means our ability to think stops and we start to run on our emotional responses and our emotional reactions, which
Is that the point where you press the send button out of anger nearly?
Exactly. That's the point where you press the send button out of anger without having read it properly or thought through the consequences. And as a result, you may cause quite a mess. The person who is more aware of their own state and where they are and how they're responding to situations, forget the person who's sending the message for a minute, but the person who's receiving it, they can actually manage themselves, as I said earlier, in a much more mindful way. So you become an observer of your own behaviour, which means that you respond to situations, whether they're in work or whether they're in your personal life, in a much more considered way. If you are sending information, you know, or if you're communicating something, a big change, you know that you're going to put possibly a large proportion of your team into a threat state. You also know that if they're in that threat state, they're going to lose all their creativity, so any creativity is going to go out of the window. They're going to lose all their ability to think logically, so that's going to go out of the window. So unless you can move them more towards the reward state, more out of that threat state, you're losing not just a really good human being because you've made them an emotional wreck almost, you're losing all of that productivity, all of that thinking, all of that strategizing, you're losing the knowledge worker that you employed to take your business forward. So it's really important to understand it. And even if you only understand it on a simple basis or it makes a huge difference to you, but also to everybody around you.
I'll tell you what we'll do in just a moment. We'll look at some strategies, shall we, and see if there's some maybe best practice and good advice that we can give to some businesses to maybe engage with their workforce and make them feel that they really are truly part of the organisation. We'll do that in a moment.
Yep.
Something to think about there, just for a second. Hope you enjoyed today's show. It really is an insight, I think. If you're sitting watching the programme at the moment, you're thinking to yourself, you know, this sounds like the way we do things. One question I will ask you, a very short answer on this. When you have a workforce that are in the threat state, can that ever be beneficial to the organisation? Is there any capital that can be taken from a threat state?
No. It is the short answer to that. No. You're just running down a rabbit hole. No.
So would I be right in saying the answer is no then?
The answer is no.
The answer in that particular case
the answer is definitely no.
Definitely no. Not just no, but no. So there we have it. Okay, listen, we're going to come back and we'll continue talking. My guest on today's show is Deborah Hulme. She's the founder in fact, one of the founders. Are you one of the founders or the founder?
The founder.
The founder. The founder of Minerva Engagement. By the way, something that we were talking about earlier on is all the different places that you can actually watch the programme on. I was doing a little bit of work over the weekend as the programme goes out live on Mondays, and I was looking at all the different platforms that we are currently on. I've rewritten the description on iTunes, which is great fun. I found that a lot of fun, found it really interesting. The thing that's interesting about iTunes are the number of people that are now downloading this programme and taking it with them. What we tend to do is we download the programme or we upload the programme, the whole hour show. What we're going to be doing, we're going to give you the option very shortly to have the programme either as the entire hour programme or we're going to release it piecemeal, 12 minutes at a time over the course of the following week, in fact, so that you've got an opportunity to maybe download a bit on a particular day, so you get around about 12 minutes or thereabouts of the programme. We're looking at that. We'd love your feedback on it. If you have any feedback, please drop us an email, the studio at businessconnectionslive.com, leave something maybe on Facebook, or even go onto the website of Business Connections Live, which is the home of Business Connections Live, of course, at businessconnectionslive.com. Go on there, leave us a comment, email us, talk to us, because the whole idea is to put all these programs are produced and created for your benefit. There's over 200 hours of great programming advice there. Now, the other thing that I'd like you to do is when you do download the program from iTunes, say something nice about the program if you enjoyed it. If you think the information you're getting from Deborah today is changing the way that you are thinking about your employee comms, if it's changing the way and educating you about the way you think about neuroscience, if it's educating you and informing you on maybe the way you could change things and become more effective in your business area or your business team, then please just leave us, if you don't mind, an email or a note on the actual iTunes download. Let's have a look at this. Here we are. It's dead easy to do. Just find this, view it in iTunes. You must have iTunes, obviously, to allow you to do this. It's the only way you'd be downloading, unless you were doing it on Stitcher or Blueberry. You'll find the ratings and reviews. Remember, iTunes is the biggest podcasting platform on the planet. Write a nice review, give 5 stars, say that Deborah Hulme loved every single word that she said. It'll be a big thank you from us and to you for doing that. So thank you very much indeed. The more people that do that, what will happen is iTunes has got this weird algorithm that the more people that leave positive comments about the programme, the more it will recommend it to other people that are looking for similar topics. So it helps us, helps you, and it also helps the programme be more and more popular. And by being more popular, it means that we can maintain the programme for you on a weekly basis. Don't forget, you can contact us at businessconnectionslive.com if you want to drop us an email. You can also, if you wish, give us a call on 01784 256 777. If you want, you can follow our stream of consciousness at BCL Business TV on Twitter. Our Facebook live page or our Facebook page is waiting for you to visit us there. But don't forget the website, because you get all the show notes, you get everything on the website, you get contact details of the guests at businessconnectionslive.com. You're watching Business Connections Live. My guest on today's programme is Deborah Hulme. She's the founder of Minerva Engagement, and we are talking about employee engagement, motivation, how you turn maybe unhappy employees into happy employees. So what are the strategies then as a business that you should be considering? What are the key things that you should be looking at? What are the things you're not doing today that you could fairly easily implement tomorrow to make a difference? This is a big ask now, isn't it? Make a big ask to make it all work out in your business. Go on. What do you think the single simplest thing that a business can do to change the way their employees feel about working for them?
I think be really clear with your employees on the psychological contract, if you like, that they're engaging into when they join the organisation and when they stay with the organisation. And that's around the purpose of the organisation, the vision of the organisation, the values of the organisation, the things that determine culture and behaviour, and the reason somebody's going to invest their time to be there. And we tend to do that very heavily. We talk about that very heavily at the recruitment stage, and then it can be somewhat different when they join the organisation. And I think maintaining that and that level of consistency right through the employee life cycle is very, very hard to do, because it's always easy not to do it.
Because we get used to it,
because
don't we?
we get used to it. And also we're so good at platitudes, and we're so good at using words. And remember, as humans, we don't like effort. So values, to really, for example, to bring them to life, you have to talk about them. You have to engage with them. You have to think about them as part of the decisioning process, as part of the supply process. You have to make them real inside the organisation. That takes effort, and it takes focused attention, which I've said earlier tires us quickly, but it takes a lot of focused attention. If you just stick them up on a poster and put them around the wall, but actually then don't bring them to life or live by them in your decisions, you might as well not have them. If you don't refer to them as in relation to how they're driving strategy and how they're impacting performance, then why bother? You know, so there has to be a balance, and they need to be constantly reinforced.
When you go into businesses and you're talking to businesses about this, do you find senior members within the management team will come up with restrictions of why they can't do that or they shouldn't do it? I mean, what are the excuses?
Well, quite often they'll think they are doing it. It's willful blindness, to be honest. and it's only when you confront, or only when you hold the mirror up and say, well, if you're doing it, why is this happening? Or if you're doing it, why are people here? That they can start to, or that people start to think about it a little bit more deeply. It's very easy when we are surrounded by artifacts and it's written all over our website to think that we are doing something. But actually, unless you've taken the time to understand what that means and what that means for me and how that relates to my behaviour in my role, then I don't know what to do with it. It's customer service. I always find.
Are we talking about empowerment now? So empowerment for an employee to make a decision.
Yes, but using
right
the values as their moral compass, if you like, in terms of what actually bringing the values into life within the organisation, rather than blindly following a process that actually may be incorrect, but nobody's noticed. It is against the values, but I'm going to do it because it's the process. Actually, through looking at it through the lens of the values, you could then put your hand up at your next meeting, or you could and say, actually, do you know what? We do this over here. Our values say this, there's a disconnect. What are we going to do about it? How are we going to move this forward? Or do our values matter? Or are we going to hold on to this?
So I take it then, when we look at our values as a business owner, they're not just stuck in stone, are they? Our values must sort of vary with time, place, and people.
Absolutely, and they will evolve, and they will grow, and they will get stronger. The more people talk about them, and the more people challenge them in different organisations. But you have to take them off the walls, and you have to take them out of the website. You also have to
take them off the wall and put them in their heart.
Oh, Steve,
do you like that?
Yes. Please. But that comes back to written, unwritten rules. That comes back to written, unwritten rules. You know, so we have, I don't know, a value of honesty. Okay, so what's the unwritten rule around that? And I think as an organisation, actually, or even as an individual, actually, if you wanted to test it without taking it quite so far, really think hard about what the written and the unwritten rules are in your life and in your experience, and understand what you do stand for and what you don't, and the impact that has on everybody around you. Because as individuals, we do not follow the thinking process, we follow the behaviour every single time. So what you write, and even what you say to me, it's okay, but I'm not going to take any notice of it unless your behaviour supports it.
How do we know when we're there? How do we know when we've got there, when we've achieved it, when we've taken it off the walls, it's in their heart now? How do we know we are getting it right?
You'll never be there. It's an ongoing journey, because as humans, we're constantly growing and we're constantly expanding, and there'll always be new challenges, particularly in the environment we're now in. So it's a constant, ongoing test and learn. And the minute you stop testing and learning, then you go backwards.
But I suppose if you don't have that position where you know that you've achieved there must be measures of achievement. And maybe achievement's the wrong word. Otherwise, it just becomes open-ended, doesn't it?
Oh no, yes, you can see, you can measure how the level of pride people have in the organisation.
It's interesting, the word pride.
You can look at the feedback that you're getting on things like Glassdoor, which tends to be quite honest and brutal in some cases.
Glassdoor?
Glassdoor.
I haven't heard that expression. What's that?
Glassdoor, it's an online job system, really, where you can go on and you can rate your companies that you work for and leave your feedback quite honestly and openly.
Crikey.
That's quite good. You can speak to the customers. The customers will tell you that there is a link between shareholder, a very strong link between shareholder, customer and employee. So if your employees are really focused on customer and providing great service and proud of the company, and it's all very positive and challenging but good, the customers will feed that back. It will come back through the customer NPS scores or the customer surveys. There's many different ways you can, if you're prepared to listen. Most of us, like I say, we're kind of willful blindness. If you're prepared to listen, there are many ways you can find out how well you're doing and how engaged and what your employees think about working for your organisation.
Do you know, we're nearly there. Do you know that? Oh. Come a little closer to me, by the way, because you're drifting off the screen there on me. There we are. That's better. She's joining. You can see the body language. She's just doing that, trying to get out the door.
The wheels on the chair.
Towards the door. So there we are. Listen, you want to find out more about Minerva Engagement, you'll find their website here. You can tell me about some of the people that are here, actually. If you go to minervaengagement.com, I've gone to the About page, and you'll see that Deborah's there. We've got Judith. And we've got Kath. So you've got a whole team of people here that are there to help organisations. The water cooler pitch about Minerva Engagement is what, 30 seconds?
Well, we specialise in culture change, employee engagement and internal communication. So we're helping organisations improve performance inside out.
It's as easy and as straightforward as that. If you just, we'll just go back on the website again. As I said, at minervaengagement.com, what we do, we improve business and personal performance from the inside out. Where have I heard that before? Love the cartoons that are on there. Defining culture, embedding change, engaging leadership, inspiring teams. Some good stuff on there. And you can see that the quality of their client base is second to none. The likes of BG, British Gas, British Telecoms, Carillion, Coventry, Department of Transport. Well, they all sorts of different, but EDF Energy, to name but a few. You can follow them as well on Twitter at Minerva Engagement. You can follow their tweets. We always ask our guests at the end of each and every programme to give us the key takeaways from the programme today. Something for you to maybe go away and to think about over the coming hours or days or weeks. Don't forget, you can always contact Deborah after the programme perhaps. Maybe Deborah coming into your organisation could actually maybe focus you once again on the way that you're doing your employee comms and maybe get a little bit more out of your workforce as well. Maybe make them feel happier too. Deborah, straight down camera at number 4. You know the routine, who you are, where you're from. The airways, madam, are all yours.
Thank you. Deborah Hulme, I'm from Minerva Engagement, and we specialise in employee engagement, internal communication and culture change. And I think the main takeaway from today is that employee engagement is very much around building connections and building relationship. It's a long, ongoing process, but it is something that makes a huge difference to sustainability in business, and it requires a different way of thinking and a different way of being than perhaps what we have we've dealt with before.
Great show. I don't know about, I always enjoy having Deborah in the studio, and the thing is that the conversation will continue as we walk out through the door. We'll be hard pushed to get fight, someone says, but the fight will continue as we walk out the door. Listen, we hope you've enjoyed today's programme. It's been a real insight into what you should be thinking about. Yeah, I've got my ideas, I've got my views, and I'm all for the ongoing, continuous communication. But Deborah is dead right. You know, you put too many messages in there, and then all of a sudden you've got a bit of a mess on your hands. Really, if you think about what they're doing on television, what they're doing on radio, a radio ad is one thought. It's one thought per ad. That's all they're talking about. The moment you put the second thought in there, you're going to have a few problems. Put 3 in there, you're probably at the limit. Put 4 in there, and one of them's going to be forgotten. Just be a little bit more laser targeted even, in the way that you're communicating with your team. But also, I suppose, listen to them.
Absolutely, definitely, without doubt, yes. It's all about a two-way conversation, connection and relationship. Yeah.
Deborah, it's been a pleasure having you with us on the programme. Hope you enjoyed today's programme. Deborah Hulme, founder of Minerva Engagement, and it's been an absolute pleasure having her on the programme today. All right, then, let's just do a little bit of housekeeping before we walk out the door. So the pressure is off now. You've done your bit now. Who have we got coming up next? The next programme. Now, it's a bank holiday here in the UK next Monday. Am I right in saying that? Yeah, I am correct. I get 10 points. And so there's no live show next Monday. We decided we might have the day off. So our next programme, we're going to be talking to Samantha Earle. She's the General Manager of Per Temps Driver Training. What are the implications for you as a business owner when it comes to your fleet out there? Are you employing contract drivers? Where does the liabilities finish? Where do they start? Samantha Earle's going to be joining us here in the studio. We'll be able to find out more. As I said, she's with Per Temps Driver Training. Coming up on future programmes, James Potter. He was good last time he was on. He is the LinkedIn man. We're going to be talking to him. If you're using LinkedIn for prospecting for new clients at the moment, he will give you some really good advice. Incidentally, if you go to his website, he is doing 100 LinkedIn prospecting hints in 100 days. And that really is worth going and signing up for. Rosie Millen, Miss Nutritionist Health Advisor. That'll be interesting too. She's going to be coming in on the programme. Looking forward to that. Thank you, Rosie. Ian Dixon, speaker and coach. Grant Liboff, Sticky Marketing Club, and also my old mate Jackie Jarvis is going to be on the programme. And that practically wraps up this particular edition of the programme. Hope you've enjoyed it. And don't forget, just think about what you've heard. Watch out for the programmes to be published on all the different platforms. But from myself, Steve Highland, and also the lovely Deborah Hulme, till we talk again. We'll see you again in a couple of weeks' time. But till then, bye for now. Bye-bye.